1.
Welcome to the Daikaiju Network podcast commentary of 1984's Gojira, which is the official Japanese title. Otherwise known, it's called Return of Godzilla. It's also called Godzilla 1984
Well, just on
in
this one,
various
yeah.
circles as well. Um, but yeah, we decided Jason picked this movie because we tend to take turns going back and forth as far as who does the commentaries, and I had picked Shin Godzilla about earlier in the month, and we decided that was such a huge mistake. Jason decided that, you know what, let's go back to one of the movies that Shinji Higuchi and Hideaki Anno tried to imitate, which is this film, and so here we are. Um, I have to say, just a little bit of personal history, at least with me, as far as this film goes. Of course, like many people here in the United States, my first exposure to this film was the New World Pictures cut Godzilla
The one I
1985.
always kept renting every single
Yeah,
time
the
when
one
we
you
were at the
rented
video
all the
store.
time. And I was first exposed to that movie back in 1994. And at the time, I didn't really care for it. I was 8, almost 9 years old at the time, and I just didn't care too much for the darker imagery. And even at the time, the Godzilla design, I thought the Godzilla design looked really
I
goofy.
love the
And
design.
I think then I at some point like in the late 90s early 2000s was the last time I had seen that film, and then there was this long stretch of time before I had seen it, and I sought out the Japanese version of the film, and I watched it in 2010, and I remember saying kind of in the early months of our podcast at that time, I told Jason, and then I even mentioned on one of our first podcasts, at some point 10 years ago, I said the Japanese cut is unequivocally one of the greatest, not just Godzilla movies of all time, but one of the greatest kaiju movies of all time as well. And I still stand by that. This, for me, in terms of Godzilla films, is in my top 5 if I'm including just kaiju films in general. I'm not sure if it's in my top 5. I haven't thought too much about that, but it's easily in the top 10, if not top like 6 or 7. Um, this, for me, is a film that I think holds up a lot better than many other Godzilla films from the Showa era. This film and I think Baialane are two Godzilla films that I think sort of um, kind of withstand the test of time, even though this particular film deals with Cold War tensions, and that's not, I guess you could argue there's still some sort of a Cold War going on, but it's not like with nuclear missiles and stuff right now. But in some cases, yeah, I guess it's a bit outdated, but I still think in some respects it holds up a lot better than many other films kind of around the same time and before and since. And this has been, for me, one of my favorite films. And I remember when I saw Shin Godzilla, going back to Shin Godzilla in theaters during its limited run back in 2016, I immediately realized that that film was trying to work with, hey, Pillow Master, you
And
were about to go to bed.
one of the things I want to shout out to is Godzilla Fan Zero. He's watching us live from Periscope/Twitter right now.
Yeah, thank you guys for joining us. Um, but yeah, I realized that film not only was trying, Shin Godzilla that is, was trying to sort of do its own version of Gojira. It, in many ways, tried to replicate this film as well, because anyone who owns now this DVD or Blu-ray will easily see that numerous moments within the film are mirrored within Shin Gojira. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So anyway, I've said my piece.
Yeah, geez, I was wondering when you were gonna get done here, but yeah, my first encounter with this, and I just mentioned it earlier, was through the video rental store many years ago, and I think this was probably, gosh, either the third or fourth Godzilla movie that I've seen, because as we mentioned in our earlier shows, that our first Godzilla movie that we've seen together was Godzilla versus the Sea Monster, and then obviously Yeah, I think this was the fourth one because I think I remember it was Sea Monster, then I believe Megalon, and
Then King of the Monsters, and then after that it gets hazy.
Yeah, for me, I think this was my fourth one, and I can remember every time we go to the video rental store, I pick this movie out. I just love this movie so much when I was a kid, and I just love just how the movie went. Even though that this was the New World Pictures cut, the 1985 Americanized version, and I the visuals, the characters, and just the Godzilla design. For me, by far, is what my all-time favorite Godzilla design. And out of all just the regular movies outside of the kaiju tokusatsu movies, I would have to say that this movie itself is one of my all-time favorites overall.
Awesome. All right, so are you ready to get going with the commentary?
Yep, I've got it on the menu right now, and I made sure that I lowered the volume as well as put the subtitles. So it's going to be...
Good night, Pillow Master.
The languages on here, unfortunately, if you wanted to do subtitles, it's going to have to be like the original Japanese with English subtitles over it. So I've got that going here.
All right. Yeah, I'm using the DVD. So anyone who has not joined us for any commentaries before, what I do is I go 3, 2, 1, go. Then when I say go, that's when we hit the OK or the play button on your player, so we can get going. So let me unmute mine.
You may want to lower down your volume.
I'm working on it. Give me a moment. Just as bad as my children here.
You tell them, Link.
You're an enabler. Shut the fuck up. All right, you ready?
Yep.
All right, 3, 2, 1, go.
All right. And then we'll put on the commentary cam here, so you won't have to see our ugly faces.
Speak for yourself.
All right. Oh no, the blue screen of death. Oh, that's just the Toho Productions. Mm-hmm. Mania's Revenge. I think I think it would have been interesting to see what they would have come up with a Hanna-Barbera version, like live action version of that TV show. Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. I think I don't know if this is true. I think I might have heard some rumors that with the Godzilla mini comic series where he goes to hell and everything. I think that could have been based off of that whole Godzilla versus Devil. I don't know. It's not completely confirmed or anything, so I would at least take that for a grain of salt. But it does seem to kind of go along the lines of that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. The audio versions. But yeah, I just want to let you know if you hear any chewing noises, that means I'm sort of eating because I haven't had any breakfast or this morning, so I'm gonna be having a light lunch. Ship with like all the people that have since long died, and one of the lead characters here just investigating what actually happened. You see all this like corpses that have been dried up or sucked up dry, and see like blood and everything. And then he sees one of the survivors here, and then obviously you see, I think it's one of the like these mutated mites, fleas or whatever it is. Sea louse, yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And yeah, it's like a lot of movies during this time period, especially with this film, and even with Rocky Four and some of these other movies during this time frame. Everything was, focused around the height of the Cold War at this time. So, one of the things I just want to point out too is that you can find us everywhere on these podcast networks, and as well as the streaming networks. We're not just only on YouTube or Apple Podcasts. We're also on Spotify, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, and Google Play Music, as well as Twitch, DLive, and Periscope. And also, you can follow us at these following social media links, and you also follow us or find us at daikaijunetwork.com. Yeah. Yeah, because I should have at least both our mics. Well, I should, well, I should, well, on the mixer here, I've got both our cams or mics on here. Well, because I know Kent's been talking quite a bit. Yeah, can you hear me, Jason, or Kent? Yeah, because I've been hearing Kent all this time. Well, when you muted your mic, I couldn't hear you there. Yeah, because on my mixer, I've got both our mics mic'd up. Nope. It's like the audio bars is working fine for me. Are you able to hear yourself through YouTube there, Kent? And by the way, we're at the scene of the Prime Minister just doing talking to one of his advisors here. Huh. Yeah, so it looks like Kent just realized after he was testing himself out that he wasn't able to hear himself. Why don't you try hearing yourself now here? Really? Well, it's showing on here on the mixer that our audio is working just fine. And even Kent's too. Because I know these scene by scenes. Why don't you try hearing yourself now? I tried doing something here. See if you can hear yourself on. What the heck? Well then let's just go to the main cam here. So you see the main cam right now?
Now I do. Okay. Hayden, can you hear us now?
How about you? Did you?
I think. Yeah, I can hear us. I can hear us now.
Well, what the heck?
Okay, well, crap. There was a lot of stuff I had said that didn't make it in. Doggone it.
Well,
I don't even remember what I said now.
well, the audio mixer should just be. It should have worked fine because it goes scene by scene. Because I have to add in each audio mixer in individually, so it should have worked.
Come on, like, what happened here? Like, we're 16 minutes in. Do we want to just restart this?
Oh, I suppose.
And then when you do the audio, you can clip this part out. Holy crap. Like, on the YouTube, this is going to be a disaster, but... Okay, I'm going to return
That's
to
magic of live video, you know. Let's see here.
Let's see here. Pop-up menu. I'll just have to do probably... Because if I play feature here, I'll probably go back to... Oh, no, actually, no. It does go right back to... Okay. Never mind. So, yeah. Doggone it. I don't even remember all that I said, so I guess it's just best to start from the beginning.
Let's see here. I'm going to open up my tray. And then...
Doggone it. That makes me so mad. I don't... Why would that work that way?
It should have worked. We're probably going to have to do some rechecking once after when we're done.
Well, I'm just going to recover everything that I had discussed. I think I have a general idea of what I had talked about. That is so weird.
That is
new technology.
super weird.
Doggone it.
Yeah, because it goes scene by scene on this. I wonder. Do that. I don't know. I guess I'll just have it on the main cam for the time being.
Camera's on right now. Yeah, we'll just have to figure it out later.
Yeah. All right, so I'm on the main menu here, and let me just.
So am I.
Let me just check. Okay, Japanese, English subtitles. Okay, I got it on the play button right now.
All right, so here we go. 3, 2, 1, go.
Okay, finally gonna get this right this time.
We're gonna get right this time. All right, so here I go rehashing.
And also, don't
a bunch of what I've said.
Also,
so far.
Don't just want to point out that I'll probably be eating in the middle of this. So.
All right, so one of the misconceptions a lot of people have about the period between Terror Mechagodzilla and this film is that they assume Toho, when they got together after Terror Mechagodzilla's theatrical run, that considering the ticket sales for Terror Mechagodzilla, I think were the second lowest ever in the series history, even up to this very moment in time, that Toho decided, okay, it's time to put Godzilla on an indefinite hiatus. And actually, that's not how it went. What ended up happening was that Toho was still looking to make Godzilla films. And what they ended up doing was putting feelers out there in various different forms, a lot of them in print and all that, to make it seem like, hey, we are producing this film. And so here's an example of some of the films that they were looking to put, that they were saying anyways to people in ads that they were producing to see if it generated any sort of hype. Such hypothetical films were Space Godzilla, Minya's Revenge, Godzilla vs. the Devil, Gargantua, The Resurrection of Godzilla, which is very close in title to what we have here, and a feature version of the Hanna-Barbera Godzilla cartoon series. And so, like I was saying earlier, I think a lot of these, in theory anyway, sounded interesting. Like just straight up Space Godzilla sounded interesting. Minya's Revenge sounded interesting just because I think Minya's pretty funny. Godzilla vs. the Devil, for as ridiculous as that sounds, I think there could have been something interesting there. And Godzilla vs. Gargantua, I think... it sounded interesting as well.
So, like, one
Space God's the best, though. It would have been interesting as a standalone film.
So, like, which of the Gargantuas would he fight? Would it be, like, either one of them or both?
I don't think that's ever been mentioned because in some of my material that I have been reading, this book by David Callett and also by Steve Rifle's book, who still owes me an interview, I don't recall, it certainly doesn't say in David Callett's book, and I don't recall it ever saying in Steve Rifle's book specifically which Gargantua. No one, to my knowledge and recollection, really even knows kind of what that would have looked like.
Yeah, and what is that? I just want to barge in as far as what Hayden mentioned about, like I mentioned in our now cut out version of this podcast, or commentary, was that I think I might have heard something as far as the Godzilla in Hell mini comic series, that could have been based off of the Godzilla vs. the Devil. I'm not entirely sure. Don't quote me on that. I would just take it with the grain of salt for right now. I'm not sure if it's like actually confirmed if that was the case. But yeah, it's sort of, tips along that line.
Yeah, and ultimately what brought Godzilla back into theaters was Disney. Because what ended up happening in sort of the late 70s, early 80s is that Toho made a deal with Disney to distribute Disney's films in Japanese theaters. And what Toho decided to do was to say, okay, well, let's kind of throw some of our classic Godzilla films into theaters as well for people. And they realized that a lot of the classic Godzilla films that they threw out, that they were making just as much, if not more, money.
So yeah, you can probably
than the Disney films they were distributing.
You can at least thank Disney for bringing Godzilla back.
Well, yes and no. I think what Disney was not actively involved.
No.
Toho just sort of decided, well, we're distributing films, so let's just sort of, as primers to these Disney films that we're showing, let's throw out some Godzilla films in there for people as well. It could have potentially happened even if Toho, let's say, I don't know, maybe made a deal with Universal Amblin to distribute those types of films like E.T. or whatever. And who knows, maybe the same thing would have happened if they would have made a deal with a different studio. I don't know. But what they ended up seeing was that their classic Godzilla films were doing just as well, if not better, than many of the Disney films they were distributing. And Toho realized, hey, our character is still relevant. And so on top of that, what Toho was trying to do, events, world events at the time too, played a huge part in it. Anybody who was alive during the 80s or knows their history around the 80s knows that the Cold War really ramped up during this time frame. And nuclear weapons were the big thing. A lot of people were worried that the U.S. and the former Soviet Union / Russia were going to throw nuclear missiles and bombs at each other. And Toho obviously is like, okay, well, obviously our character, our cash cow, was born out of, the H-bomb, nuclear bombs. And at the same time, in the Pacific Ocean, we are caught in between these two countries, these two quote-unquote warring countries in the United States and Russia. So part of that, or should I say a huge part of that, is the reason why we have the story that we have here with this particular film.
Yeah, and
Godzilla vs. Kong is our chance to bring that back.
Yeah, and like a lot of the movies during this time period, including Rocky IV and maybe some of the others I can't think of right now, it's like a lot of those types of movies were based on the height of the Cold War at that time.
A lot of U.S. action films of the time did focus on that. Yep.
Man, I didn't even realize that with this lice here, that there's a harpoon sticking right through it.
Oh yeah, you never noticed that?
I never noticed that until now. Wow. Even though I've watched this movie for like forever, I didn't even realize that until now. I'm guessing that they even show that in the new world pictures cut.
They did, yeah. Like you can see it in a couple of quick scenes.
I guess I never even bothered.
This particular, and I would love to do a commentary on that particular film, but you don't have a copy of it. So,
which one?
1985. I really like this opening sequence here. It's very haunting. It's gruesome. And it definitely does take you back to the origins of the original film. And I guess maybe for anyone who is not familiar with this film and kind of the subsequent films, this film ignores everything from Godzilla Raids Again through Terror Mechagodzilla. This is sort of a sequel of sorts to Gojira.
So I just want to point out that you can follow us, or you can follow our podcast networks, and as well as the streaming networks. And if I can bring this up, we're not just only available for YouTube or Apple Podcasts. We're available on Spotify, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, Google Play Music, and as well for streaming networks Twitch, DLive, and Periscope. And if I can bring this up, you can also like and subscribe and follow us on these select social media websites. Just search for Daikaiju Network, and you can find us at daikaijunetwork.com.
Please review us on places like Apple Podcasts. The more reviews we get, the more prominent we become. Obviously, the better the reviews, the more I guess attention we get, so to speak. Please, we would like 5 stars.
Like this scene right here sort of reminds me of Godzilla 2000 in a way.
How so?
Because when they're at their house and just doing some of the research and everything, it kind of reminds me of that particular scene.
Okay, I hate to do this, but nature calls, so forgive me here for a few minutes.
See here. Do a quick couple things here. Let's see. Yeah, so right now we're at the scene with Professor, what's his name? Makoto Hayashida interviewing with Hiroshi right now. Hiroshi's in the hospital right now, and he's just looking at some of the pictures, going through them to see what he saw, and just seeing the original Godzilla, the Godzilla 1954 version, right? Yeah, because I know it's been quite some time since I've last seen the original Japanese cut of this film, and I honestly can't remember if I've seen this particular shot where Makoto is talking to this one government advisor.
So the one government advisor, I wasn't obviously in here. I didn't catch his name if they showed it. Who's talking to Professor Hayashida here with the glasses? He played Taka Sashima in Godzilla vs. Gigan. He was the brother who was held hostage by Children's Land.
Guess I have to...
And right here, playing the Prime Minister, Seiki Mitamura, is actor... Oh, crap, I took my bookmark out. Now I can't find it.
Talking about...
Hold on, give me a second.
Talking about the Prime Minister, it's Seiki Mitamura.
Right, but I'm looking for the actor here. Keiji Kobayashi. Yeah. Somehow he's the main character in this movie. But he played, and this is a movie I would highly recommend people seeking out if you can. I do have a copy of it. It is an interesting film. It is a film in terms of tone that is similar to this. It's called Submersion of Japan, or Tidal Wave. Or Japan Sinks. It's under those different titles, and it's based off of the novel Japan Sinks. And it's based off of sort of pseudo-realistic science that Japan could actually sink because it sits in the Ring of Fire. And it is a movie where if you like this film in terms of its color palette And in terms of its effects and its tone, Submersion of Japan, I think could be a film for you. I've seen it only once, and I do own it. Uh, from a special effects standpoint, it is an incredible film.
Oh yeah.
The effects work is marvelous in it. It's sort of a mildly depressing film. So if you're kind of like me and you get kind of wrapped up in what you're seeing on screen, you have been forewarned that it is sort of a depressing film. But it is well acted. The special effects are incredible. It gets a wee bit gruesome in a couple of spots, but nothing overly gruesome. But if you're a bit sensitive to certain types of, like, I guess, gore, so to speak, there's a couple moments that it gets a little intense. But it is quite the film, and I would highly recommend checking it out. You're a sucker for special effects? Me too. I bought Alita Battle Angel on Blu-ray like 5, 6, 7, 8
Oh,
months ago.
Alita?
I have yet to watch it, but
Yeah,
but
I've seen some some clips of that movie. It looks pretty damn good. I fortunately didn't catch it in theaters when it came out last February of last year, but yeah, it does look pretty good.
yeah, I've heard a lot of good things, and like I said, I've owned it for a while. I just have not watched it.
Well, maybe you could tonight.
Tonight's monster movie night with this guy.
Well, did you do one with Son of Khan last night?
The other night.
Oh, I thought it was last
We've been doing
night.
it every other night. Yeah, we've been doing it every other night. He watched it again yesterday during the day.
So what's tonight's movie?
I am not 100% sure, but I've been thinking about the 2005 extended version of King Kong.
Gotcha. I think the last time I actually watched that movie is when we did a commentary of that film years ago.
I think so too, for me. I don't understand why people hate that movie so much. Like, sure, it's long, and if that's something you don't like, I can sort of... I think it's the best Kong.
It basically goes along the lines of Khan and adds in some of the footage that was actually deleted from the original film, and then adds some stuff to make things a little bit more sense. But
I think the story is better fleshed out. I think relationships are better defined than what they are in the 33. But maybe we'll talk about that some other time. Thinking. Children. God damn it. I love them to death. I thought about doing this with just you and me, because I'm just like, I need to get away.
So what happened?
He spilled his canned water all over, and I've been telling him before, you gotta put it up on a coaster, get it up off the fucking floor. Like, get your food off the fucking floor, and look what happens. I'm sorry, everybody. It burns me up because I have these conversations with them daily. Just, you can understand why I'm about ready to Hulk out. Anyway, here, Professor Hayashida is played by Yosuke Natsuki. And people familiar with Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster will recognize him as Shindo in that film. And I don't need it wet. I need it dry. I'm sorry, everybody. You got to get a dry one. I am sorry, folks. He plays Professor Hayashida. Oh, son of a bitch. I forgot what I was saying. Oh, let's start again.
We're not going to redo.
Oh, this is a disaster. It was going so well. What the hell happened here? You gotta push down on the wet spots. And this was going so well. He plays Shindo in Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, and a lot of things, Hayden. Thankfully, you missed some sort of disasters here. But he also plays, I forget the detective's name in Dagora, the space monster, or Dogora, however you want to say. You know what? I'm just so flustered right now, just because of certain things happening on my end that. I wish I had marijuana on me.
All right. So let's just get this going. Goro, he spots Naoko, which is Hiroshi's sister, and basically tells her that he couldn't keep a secret and that his brother is alive and everything. I just got a huge,
and unfortunately, a lot of this was cut out of the
85 version,
American edit. And it's very unfortunate because, and I've talked about this before on previous podcasts, that I always thought it was weird, even as an 8/9-year-old. When I watched the 1985 version, there's a moment later in the film in which she brings Goro tea. And she just kind of looks at him, and there's no explanation as to why she's not talking to him all of a sudden. And that's because you have all this character building that goes on, and you miss some of these moments, even here in just the next few seconds that you're going to see, that it's cut out of the American film.
Mm-hmm.
And even other things later on that are cut out, in which he exploits the fact that she thinks her brother's dead. He's actually alive. And, of course, she's excited to hear that he survived the Daikoku Island incident that happened at the start of the film.
Mm-hmm.
And, obviously, she's pissed at Goro for taking advantage of that.
Yeah. Yeah, and, like, in the one scene between where she finds out that her brother is alive, and then all the way to the guy at the hospital is opening up the door from him to his hospital room there. Parts of that entire scene was cut out from the 85 version.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And now, this particular scene reminds me of a point I want to make that I think the 85 film does a bit better. In the 85 film, this whole sequence has some of the ominous soundtrack being played. Obviously, right now, there's no music being played. And I think, in my opinion, the 85 film, by adding some of the score to some of these scenes that don't have music in the Japanese cut, actually adds to some of the tension, some of the atmosphere that is going on. And I just think by not having some of that music here, to me, it sort of makes this moment less ominous and creepy, like it did in the 85 cut.
Yeah, because with some of that music that they added into in this scene here, that it does make it feel like a little creepy and scary in a way. It's like something's going to happen.
Yeah. And something I want to mention while we're still kind of a little bit in the beginning moments of the film here. Tomoyuki Tanaka, when they wanted to bring Godzilla back, wanted to make a serious film. And I think it rightfully so, because we earlier had talked about, how the Cold War had heightened at about this time in history. And here's something Tomoyuki Tanaka said that I totally disagree with. This character, meaning Godzilla, change was responsible for his decline, meaning that Godzilla turning into a superhero later in the 60s and 70s was responsible for the movie attendance declining later. It was a mistake. The fans did not like Godzilla when he was good, agreed Toho spokesperson Masaru Yabe. I just want to say,
I think it was.
not only do I disagree, I think that's
Yeah,
wrong.
a lot of people, even the community out there and some of the others that they've mentioned, it was basically at the age of when TV was getting popular and everything, and that's when ticket sales at theaters were dwindling because of TV was coming in.
Exactly. Television was the
Yeah.
problem. Television was the problem, and what ended up happening was that Toho took a page out of Daiei's book with their Gamera films. Daiei's Gamera films, by and large, were primarily focused, almost from the very beginning, focused on children.
Right.
And what ended up happening was that once TV became more prominent within Japanese homes, more adults stayed home, quit attending movies, and the adults would drop their kids off at the cinema for several hours. And typically what would happen is, several, 2 or 3 movies at a time would play. And Toho developed a lot of their Godzilla films eventually to cater more to a younger audience. So no, I not only do I disagree with Masaru Yabe, but also Tomoyuki Tanaka. I believe they are just straight up wrong because it was television that hurt Godzilla. It hurt not just Godzilla, it hurt the entire Japanese film industry.
But
The 70s was a terrible time for Japanese cinema.
well, and then too, I think they should have at least had some kind of like research as far as trying to figure out like the decrease and increase comparability to for both cinema and TV as well at the time.
They obviously didn't do that. Yeah, because they obviously did not do that. Because, like I said, they're wrong. Third parties did the research, they didn't.
Mm-hmm. And as far as this scene, I'm not entirely sure. Well, no, I'm wrong. I was going to say something else, but it was something totally different. But I think if I can remember in the '85 version, I think that they didn't mention. I don't know if they mentioned anything as far as the uh, Russian nuclear attack by Godzilla.
They did.
Did
It's
it?
very quick.
But it's like in this one that
It-
they really extended it and go very thoroughly with it.
Yeah. That's why Terra Mechagodzilla did so bad. Terra Mechagodzilla, I mean, I think that TV was a huge influencer, and I think some people on some level were burnt out by Godzilla at that time, because obviously there for many years you had a new movie coming out every year. There's nudity, yeah. I mean, it's very brief. It's fake too.
Yeah.
But I just think it was a combination of TV, but also I think there was a little bit of burnout at the time with Godzilla. Because look, I mean, Jason and I have talked about it here on the podcast quite a bit, and anyone who's been listening to our podcast over the last 3 to 5 years at least has always heard us say when we get back from G-Fest that we feel burnt out, and we usually take anywhere between 2 to 4 weeks off from our G-Fest overview podcast to just sort of unwind and get away from kaiju for a while. Like, even I have found myself burning out anywhere between once or twice a year on this genre because I'm just so saturated in it. Part of it is because we do this podcast. We do this podcast a couple times each month on average, and you just kind of get burned out after a while.
And that's kind of one of the reasons why we started doing at least once a month.
Yeah, and so I think that was part of the problem at the time too, is that there was burnout from the character, because originally Godzilla was going to go on a hiatus in 1968 after Destroy All Monsters. Well, then that did mucho dinero, and then Toho decided, why not keep going? So in 69, you got Godzilla's Revenge, or All Monsters Attack. And then a year and a half to 2 years later, Ghidorah. Then the year after that, Gigan. Then Megalon and Mechagodzilla, I think part of it was burnout. But then at the same time, too, um, you know, just the movie may not have connected with a whole lot of people ever. You hardly ever watch any Godzilla movies. There was a period of time for me where I didn't either. There, basically, from the time Final Wars was released on home video here in the States, from that moment up until we started this podcast about 10 years ago, I mean, you're talking a period of like 5 years in which I would watch maybe no more than a couple films a year. And yeah, I mean, there was a period in which I barely was watching anything either. And part of that was just because nothing new was coming out of Toho. Just in general, in terms of Godzilla films, nothing new was coming out.
Yeah,
And
basically the only times I have the time to watch any kind of kaiju related films is when we're doing commentaries. Although there was one time, it wasn't not too long ago where I watched a kaiju movie, and I think that was Key and the Monsters. That was the last time I actually took the time to watch it.
And Ishiro Honda was originally asked by Tomoyuki Tanaka to direct this particular film, and he turned it down. And it's strongly believed that the reason why he turned it down was that his final Godzilla film that he directed, Terra Mechagodzilla, was very frustrating for him. It was frustrating for him because what ended up happening was that Tanaka and just Toho in general, just the studio, they kept changing things up. He had certain ideas of how the story and everything should go, and roughly half the time, if not most of the time, Tanaka said, no, let's do this instead. And so Honda just kind of got frustrated and sick and tired of that, and Honda didn't want to potentially have to go through that again. So Honda declined to work on this film. And obviously he never worked on another Godzilla film again. Instead, what Honda was doing at this time was that he was working with his mentor, Akira Kurosawa, on several films. And a familiar name. A person that anybody familiar with the Heisei series should know anyways. He is assistant director on this film, Tako Akawara. He is director of 1992's Godzilla vs. Mothra, 1993's Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, Mothra, sure, right there, and 1995's Godzilla vs. Destroyer, and he would also be the director to resurrect Godzilla for the first time in Japan in 5 years, well, technically 4, I guess, with Godzilla 2000 Millennium. Mm-hmm. And that would be the last Godzilla film he would direct. Akawara obviously learned a lot from this particular film, and when Kazuki Omori and just certain things just kind of petered out with him, with his work with Baiolane and then King Ghidorah, Toho came after Akawara, and obviously he was, in my opinion, a good choice. In fact, I've always said on this podcast, I think Akawara, along with Fukuda, are two directors that really deserve a heck of a lot more credit than they have received from at least Western fan bases. Those two directors, I personally believe, created some fun slash really good films, and I think they did the best that they could, especially with Fukuda, with what little that they had. And I always believed Akawara was arguably like the second best director in the Godzilla franchise. However, with that being said, I must say that Koji Hashimoto, who is the director of this film, did one hell of a job
Oh yeah, definitely.
himself here.
I wish he could have done more with the Godzilla franchise.
Yeah, and I've said it on this podcast before too. I find it interesting because this film did do pretty well at the box office. It made money. I've always found it strange that Toho never asked him to come back, unless maybe they did and he just kept turning them away. I don't know, but I've never found anything to suggest one way or the other sort of what happened. But I think Koji Hashimoto did a heck of a job here. And I think if Hashimoto had come back, this whole not millennium, this whole Heisei era would have looked a lot different, and I think in some cases, to be honest, maybe even better. Kazuki Omori, who was involved with Biowane and directed King Ghidorah. Let me double check here. I don't know if Omori directed Biowane. I know he was involved with at least sort of the production of it. Let me double check here. Why not?
Yeah, Kazuki Omori did the screenplay, and he also directed it as well.
Okay, so okay. Wait a minute, no. Produced, associate producer, directed. Okay, directed and screenplay. Okay, but yeah, and I've stated here on this podcast before too, I never thought, and part of it is Toho's fault with King Ghidorah as well, because Biowane didn't do as well at the box office. I always thought the King Ghidorah film was the worst of the Heisei, and in my opinion, it's also one of the worst of the franchise. The film, after two seriously tonal films, you get into this goofy mess of a film in King Ghidorah, and I just thought that just was such a whiplash-inducing moment. To me, King Ghidorah is just a mess in a lot of cases. I think the kaiju scenes,
they're really good.
But I think the kaiju scenes, I think by and large are done pretty darn well. But everything else involved in that film is just a complete and absolute mess. And Omori was not involved again, at least in the director's chair, with Godzilla after that. And I just think Koji Hashimoto, if he was able to get more involved, I really think we could have gotten something that would have been different. And I think, and I love Tako Akawara. I've always said I think he's a very good director. His work in Mechagodzilla and Destroy, I think, are fantastic, even though I don't think those films are perfect, but I think they're pretty darn good. Godzilla vs. Mothra, I think, is an underrated film in the franchise, and I think so is Godzilla 2000. I think Godzilla 2000 deserves a heck of a lot more credit than it gets. But yeah, it's interesting Hashimoto never returned. Like I said, I don't know if he just was never asked again by Toho, and if not, then why not? And if he was, did he turn it down? You know, it just would be interesting to kind of also find out if he was asked and then turn it down. Why did he turn it down? And so, you know, we've been getting wrapped up in a lot of things kind of involving surrounding this film and all that. We just got done watching Godzilla attack a nuclear power plant. That's the first time ever in the Godzilla franchise that ever happened. And it's kind of strange considering Godzilla was born, of the nuclear bomb and all that,
And
that he never in any of the previous films attacked like a nuclear power plant.
And you would have thought that during his entire 30 years up to this point that they would have at least have done a scene where he does do that, but they never did.
No. Yeah, and I'm with you, Hayden. I do believe the Heisei series gets too much undeserved hate. But I will say this. I think some of that dislike or hatred by some fans of that particular era has to do with dubs. And that's not really Toho's fault per se. Those are international dubs, but I think they did send, I guess in some ways it is Toho's fault, because they did send him to this company in Hong Kong that did a lot of the international dubs during that period. But I think the international dubs has a lot to do with what people think of those films. But even then, I think the quality of the dub, while it does on some level influence a person's view of a film, I don't think it's something that should ultimately decide whether or not a person likes or hates a film. Now, I say that and I speak as a person who says, okay, the international dub, which is what we're getting here with the Return of Godzilla, in my personal opinion, is not as good as the New World Pictures dub is. Now, does that mean I think this film is worse off because of it? Technically, no. But is it sort of different in a way? Like, does it sort of, in a roundabout way, change my viewing of it? Very slightly, but it doesn't ultimately change my opinion of the film.
Mm-hmm.
I swear I've been talking like for the last 15 minutes straight.
Well, I've at least tried to get something, man, but then you always keep interrupting or just keep going, so it's like I'm just gonna leave it be. But yeah, see what I tell you?
I didn't know you were about ready to talk.
But yeah, the Professor Hayashida just got back from Mount Mihara there, doing some little research along with one of his colleagues. They're just trying to get some data.
It wasn't Hayashida. It was Ken.
Yeah, that's right. My bad. For some reason, I was just thinking of Professor Hayashida at the moment. But yeah, Ken, he was with one of the Professor Hayashida's colleagues over at Mount Mihara doing some studying of the volcano, trying to come up with a plan and everything. That's how they come up with a potential plan of trying to lure Godzilla or something of the sort.
And a person that I think deserves an absolute ton of credit, let's talk about the score right now, is Reijiro Koroku.
I have to say the score.
Who does the score?
I have to say the score to this movie is probably one of the best scores in the Godzilla franchise. I love it so much.
The score to this film, by the way, a quick interruption here. Hiroshi Koizumi plays the geologist. That particular actor we just saw with sort of the vanishing hairline. I think he played the villain in the third Daimajin film, I think. Don't quote me on that. And then we saw just a few seconds earlier. I want to make sure I get this actor's. Okay, here we go. Yoshifumi Tajima. He played.
And
I just forgot the name.
By the way,
the villain.
And by the way, Hiroshi Koizumi was a colleague of the professor that Kim went to at Mount Mihara. Now that
Yes.
remember.
And the guy I just mentioned, God damn it, I keep forgetting his name. Yoshifumi Tajima.
Stop forgetting.
He played Kumiyama in Mothra vs. Godzilla, and he also played a lot of other bit roles in some of the other kaiju and tokusatsu films by Toho, kind of in the 50s and 60s and what have you. So yeah, but getting back to the score by Reijiro Koroku, I think it's fantastic. It's been a while since I've listened to it, but I remember when I didn't listen to it on CD here from the Perfect Soundtrack Collection of Godzilla released by Toho Music. I just absolutely love it. I think it's a score that definitely shows a lot of range. It's a score that has rousing marches and themes. It also has very somber music and kind of creepy music as well for when necessary. Akira Ifukube, like Ishiro Honda, was asked to come back and participate in the production of this film. And Ifukube, when he found out that the monster, Godzilla, was going to go from 50 meters to 80 meters, he says, I don't write music for 80-meter monsters. Which, I'm sorry, I love Ifukube, but this is kind of a dumb reason. And here we are in this very important scene where both the Soviets and the Americans are saying, look, you got a Godzilla problem. We can fix that. It's something called nuclear weapons.
Also,
yeah, you had 2 nuclear bombs dropped on you in the World War II.
I always like the guy that, like the American ambassador in this, and how he speaks and says, "We must need nuclear weapons, sir. This is a direct initiative from the president to the prime minister of Japan."
Yeah, and it just shows you that once again, this is playing into the whole fact that these two countries, America and Russia, they don't have a Godzilla problem in this film. And so it's easy for them to say, look, let's drop nuclear bombs.
Mm-hmm.
But we've seen up to this point in the film with the Prime Minister, and we will continue to see it, yep, starting right now, with him talking to his cabinet. They are saying, look, Godzilla comes to shore and he could basically ruin Japan's economy. Like, everything could come crashing down.
Mm-hmm.
But if we drop nuclear bombs, yeah, that would get rid of our Godzilla problem. However, what's going to happen with the nuclear fallout? Is Japan more or less going to be inhabitable if you drop a nuclear bomb or two on us? And, yeah, we get rid of Godzilla, but what's going to happen?
Is it going to be better or worse?
Right. There is no good answer.
Mm-hmm. So it's basically like you're trying to pick the lesser of two evils at this point.
And what we will see here in a moment is basically Japan's prime minister saying to both the U.S. and the Soviet Union, you can take those nuclear weapons and shove them where the sun don't shine. Which I think is the right answer, to be perfectly honest. Because if I were in that position, that's what I would say.
And plus, if you get rid of Godzilla, and if he does minimal damage, then it's like you're better off with minimal damage rather than having an entire nuke blasting everything inside.
But the thing is, though, you don't know what he's going to do when he comes ashore.
Well,
and even if he does minimal damage and then goes back out to sea, you know he's coming back eventually. You just don't know when.
Well, I'm talking about as far as what the plan that they have set in motion as far as trying to get rid of them. As far as the volcano
You know what
thing.
would have gotten rid of him?
What?
You baked a giant cookie. and you had it out in Tokyo Bay, and you use the flares, like in Godzilla Raids Again. And as long as the cookie doesn't get soggy and it lasts a good while, he's content.
Sometimes you just need to shut the hell up.
I'm just trying to provide something where people don't die. Godzilla doesn't die. Humans don't die.
Boy, look at that serious face. But yeah, it's like in an 85 cut, you never really seen this scene right here. Where he
No, you don't.
talks to them. Because I think right after when the Russian ambassador said, like, we need your response, and then it goes to him making the full decision.
If you see, and it's very quick, the Russian guy who's later on the boat, he's at this meeting.
Oh, really?
He's sitting next to the ambassador. Yeah, he's to that ambassador's left. Unfortunately, right there, the bald guy right there.
Oh.
So, yeah, I mean, the 85 film makes it look like the Soviets purposely launched that missile. But here what ends up happening, and we're getting ahead of ourselves, quite frankly, but I think it deserves to be mentioned since we're talking about it. The missile gets launched accidentally, and the Soviet is trying to stop the launch.
Mm-hmm. But yeah,
Crazy Americans.
I never noticed that one Russian guy that accidentally set off the nuclear missile was part of that meeting. Never knew that up until this point.
Yeah, right, Hayden. Godzilla can't die of old age and he can't get sick. I mean, yeah, it just...
Well...
He exists.
When you think about the Destroyer thing, then...
Well, yeah, I mean, but yeah, I mean, he's still saying he can't die of old age and he can't get sick.
You can maybe say the whole...
He dies as a result of his consumption of nuclear radiation, because that's just how he is. He needs it to survive. If he doesn't get it, then he dies anyway.
Well, maybe overconsumption could be some kind of sickness.
I feel you, Prime Minister. Having a cigarette right now would be nice.
That's not a cigarette, Kent.
Yeah, you're right. It's a doobie.
But yeah, it does make sense now, because that vehicle there, I can still see some of the antennas at the front part where they usually had the flags and everything. Barashevo.
Space. The final frontier. Or is it? Yeah, got the power of 20 nukes and destroy you, yep. Yep, it was just a question of was he going to explode or melt down.
Yeah, probably the size of the Tsar bomb. Yeah, I've seen the radius for that Tsar bomb that Soviet Russia tested. I forget where specifically, but that sucker was massive. Oh no, my fries!
Uncle Jason. I like that one guy's face.
The one that was piloting the helicopter?
No, the one of the cabinet members, the bald old guy.
Was it the helicopter pilot? That part sort of reminded me of the Lake Texarkana Gamma
too.
Oh my stars!
Oh my fantasies!
Yeah, that one.
Oh, is it Oh my stars or Oh my I think it's Oh my fantasies. That one, like, even if you watch it straight up, is still goofier than this one was.
Well, anytime if you've watched the Lake Texarkana version of that.
I'm talking about the pilot's facial expression.
Oh,
The facial expression in that one, even if you watch it straight up, is still goofier than the one we got
yeah.
here.
But as far as Gamer 2, if you've seen the Lake Texarkana version, the dub version of that, like so many times, and then try to actually watch the movie originally, you can't get your mind off of that whole Texarkana dub version.
I mean, we did a commentary of that like 4 or 5 years ago, and I still wish we could do a commentary of that. That thing is so great. I mean, it just... Obitsu. Let's make sweet love after we're done. Bring the lube.
Zip it up, I'm coming in. God, one of these days I gotta watch that again.
It's been a long time since I've seen it.
Even after watching it for a long time, like, it just never gets old.
It gets a little bit less funnier as the movie goes on, but part of that is just because those two soldiers are seen less as the movie goes
Well,
on.
and then they didn't. I think they were starting to run out some of the jokes here and there.
I don't think it had anything to do with the jokes. I think it had more to do... Hey, what's up, MP Films? Thank you for joining us. We're at the point in the film in which Tokyo is getting ready for Godzilla to come ashore. They're trying to set up a blockade.
Yeah, getting everything prepared by the military or the Japanese Defense Force here.
Target Godzilla until bay. That's what that dubber sounded like.
I really like these miniatures and everything that they got. They just look so, like, almost real.
A lot of the miniatures in this film, I think, are the best looking miniatures you're ever going to see in a Godzilla film with practical effects. None of the other Heisei films have buildings or vehicles that look as authentic as they do here. And I mean, even the special effects director on this film, Teruyushi Nakano, who did a lot of the Godzilla films in the 70s after Eiji Tsuburaya got sick and died, even said himself that not only is this his favorite Godzilla movie, but part of that is also due to the fact that they gave him a decent budget for this film, and as a result, he was able to do the effects work that we see here in this film. And I mean, I've always maintained that the effects work in this particular film, it still holds up all these years later.
Oh, yeah,
I
definitely.
mean, you're talking almost, 3.5, almost 4 decades later. It's still, in my opinion, like probably the best practical effects work. Like, Baialane had some great effects work. Like, the monster of Baialane is gorgeous in that film. But I don't think the buildings in that movie look as good as they do here. I don't think any of the vehicles in that movie look as good as they do here.
Yeah,
So
the skyscrapers and everything in Baialane seem to be a little bit cheaper compared to...
They do look like miniatures.
Yeah, but it's like when you see Godzilla walking through parts of, I think it was the Chiyoda, part of Chiyoda Ward there, that the buildings there look almost identical, like identical to the real thing.
Because the bomb was ready to get launched. By the way, this is the Godzilla that's on the cover of the new Godzilla Monopoly game. So as of this recording, everybody, if you have not picked up your Godzilla Monopoly game, you should do so. I know some places are sold out. I think Toy Wiz, if I'm not mistaken, sold out. I don't know if Big Bad Toy Store is selling it or not. But I know one of them, and I think it's Toy Wiz, is sold out. The best thing to do is to get it from the manufacturer. You save $10. You get, I think, free shipping as well for it. And it's a solid game. It's a solid Monopoly game. I got mine yesterday. I showed Jason the initial box of the game. Anybody who's wondering what I held up 3 fingers, the 6 tokens that you can play as.
Try and make a 3-pointer or something there.
The tokens in terms of characters you can play as, you have obviously Godzilla, Mothra, King Ghidorah, Mechagodzilla, Rodan, and you will never guess what the 6th one is.
I was surprised at this.
I assumed it was maybe Gigan, maybe Megalon, but I thought, no, it's probably going to be Gigan. I was shocked to find out it's Minya. Hey, over here! Got to fight my own battles, you know.
Looks like Lincoln's sort
I
of
love
doing
this
the
shot. This is one of my favorites of the whole franchise.
Yeah, you can see like where he goes through parts of Chiyoda Ward. Like those buildings almost look identical to the real ones. Like especially this building where the Toho Cinema is located.
I always thought, even as a kid, this particular moment was creepy because it took a helicopter landing down on a freeway full of cars and it just starts this chain reaction. Like, it just... And I love this, too. Like, watch this skyscraper fall apart as he runs into it. Give it a second here.
But yeah, it's like it. If you saw one of the shots there, you saw the...
Look at that, right
like
there.
you can see the Toho logo at the corner of the building there.
Yeah, see, look at that. He takes a chunk out of it. What ends up happening in a majority of the films in the Showa era and even after this, that building would have just crumbled in a bunch of pieces in 1 or 2 hits. Instead, it's still standing. It's still built, like, sturdy enough to where... Like, in reality, if he were to get into it, yeah, it would be a gaping hole in that building instead of just the whole thing collapsing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would recommend, Hayden, the Monopoly. I mean, I seriously thought about not even taking the plastic off the box. I'm just like, I don't think I want to do this. But I'm like, I need to look at what's inside. So what I did yesterday is I took the plastic off and opened it up. I didn't open anything else. I didn't open up the plastic for the money or like the property cards or anything like that, or even like the tokens. And I tell you, I looked at that and I saw like the top property card, which is Lecce Island. At least in mine it was. I looked at that and like I told Jason in a text last night, I'm like, this is the Kaiju game we've been waiting for. Sure, it's a Monopoly version, but this is the Kaiju game we've been waiting for.
Well, and then the picture that you sent me the other day, that the packaging, it looked a bit smaller than the usual Monopoly games, like variations.
Well, I might as well bring it out. This is, unfortunately for anybody who's listening to the podcast version of this, I'm sorry you're not going to be able to see this, but just go to our YouTube page. It's free. Costs you nothing.
Yeah. Well, most
Here,
of our
most
of the podcast stuff, it's basically free.
Okay. Whoops, I just about knocked my own can over. So here it is. I would argue it's wider.
It doesn't.
But
It
yeah,
doesn't look wider.
yeah. I don't have another I got a couple other Monopoly games in a closet.
For me, I'm just sort
but...
of comparing it to that one very old NFL game that we got many years ago.
I got that
Yeah.
one. That's here. So yeah, I might as well just show everybody. Try walking into mini brick wall, you'll find. Yeah. So part of the reason why the box is smaller is because they did a different job in terms of folding the game board. And this is actually a Daikaiju Network exclusive. This is the first time I'm going to unravel this game board.
Oh boy.
So they folded it differently than like traditional Monopoly games. So like if it's been a while since you bought a Monopoly game like me, it's different in terms of how they fold it up. Because it used to be just you fold it in half and that was that.
Mm-hmm.
So here you go.
Nice.
I mean, yeah, I mean it's ridiculously awesome. I'm gonna fold this. Whoops. Back up here for a second. Here's the money. Like I said, I didn't unwrap it.
I'm very interested in how they look. Why don't you bring it up close to the camera there? That's pretty cool looking.
It's not too bad. Let's see here.
I'm guessing they're basically all the same, right? The design.
The houses and the hotels are the same. Like I said, I didn't take the tokens out, but the tokens I think are kind of small, but I mean, I don't know how much you're going to be able to make out here, but here are the tokens. And then here's like the property cards and all that. So, like I said, Lecce Island.
Nice.
And like on the back is the back of like Godzilla Tower card.
Sweet.
Like, I mean, this is kind of neat. I will say, like I said, I was afraid to even take the plastic off of the box. I just...
Yeah,
Luminous has a good video on it. Good to know. Check them out. But yeah, like, I just... I mean, I guess you get a closer look on the back here of, like, some of the money and a few of the other cards, like property cards.
Also, speaking of which, I watched one of the Dice Tower videos the other day that the makers of King of Tokyo, they came out with like a dark edition of it, and they did, I think.
Dark edition? Was it glow in the dark or something?
it's just sort of maybe a bit darker than usual, and they've got some additional characters, and I think they made a couple rule changes to it, and I think it's from the looks of it. Yeah. I think it, in the way that we played it the last time, I think it's a little bit better after they've done a couple rule changes to it.
Yeah, because we played it, what, like 2 years ago?
Yeah, over at your place.
I was not too keen. I thought the general idea of it was good, but it seemed like it was missing other, like, rules or strategies that should have been implemented. The intention was there, but the execution was not. Mm-hmm. And I got rid of my King of Tokyo because I remember you and I tried playing that, and it took us a while to figure it out. And then after we did, we were like, this actually isn't all that fun. Like, it just...
and then as far as like the King of New York one that they also have, I think they said that was probably a little bit better. From what I heard, I think it was a bit of a different setup than King of Tokyo. But yeah, and then we played that Kaiju Crush on a live Facebook.
Oh, the card game?
Yeah, it was like it had tiles and stuff.
Yeah, and then, that wasn't too bad.
Yeah, we played that live on Facebook last year when we were at the hotel.
Yeah, I kind of forgot about that. That it was Tokyo.
But yeah,
I'm sorry for anybody who is like associated with the King of Tokyo. Like, I'm sorry, were good. It's just that there you missed out on a terrific opportunity to make something great. You just were missing on a bunch of like different rules or something to actually make it seem more kaiju-etic.
but yeah, it's like one of these times we need to play was it Kaiju Incorporated, which is a card game, and which I've got the last copy of it from the local comic book store. It seems pretty promising in a way.
I'm all for things like board games. I mean, you know, like in terms of video games, we have like a small handful of good kaiju games. Like you have the two King of the Monster games, like on Super Nintendo back in the day, and then more, not recently, but semi-recently, you have the Godzilla games on Xbox. I
GameCube.
think they were even on PlayStation there. Maybe Tink.
Yeah, I had GameCube with Godzilla King of the
Game
Monsters.
And then the Wii had the third Godzilla, Godzilla Unleashed. The DS had Godzilla Double Smash, which was the ported version of the Wii. That's a decent version of that.
Don't
I
forget
had
the
fun with
Game
it.
Boy Advance version of.
Oh, yeah, I have that one. Godzilla Domination, which is the ported version of King of the Monsters. That's decent, especially for a handheld, anyways.
And then the PS4 of the Godzilla, which that one's pretty good.
heard that. Really, I heard people weren't too keen
I
on
actually
that.
really like it, especially when you play as the 2014 Godzilla in it. It's pretty sweet.
So I mean, in terms of video games, we have a decent library. It still would be nice to have, but from a video game standpoint, we're sitting okay. But it would be nice to have something, you know, in the realm of physical games, like a board game or like a card game in which you have something that's incredibly like great. This is one of my favorite anthems, and I would argue it's one of the more recognizable marches or anthems in the entire series.
Yeah, it's like I remember in the '85 cut whenever you see that, and then after you hear Godzilla's howl, and then all of a sudden it just blurts out.
Yeah. I have to just compliment Teruyushi Nakano on the practical effects work. I mean, the skyscrapers surrounding Godzilla, not only how realistic they look, but how enormous they are. You don't get really anything like that in Biollante. You kind of sort of get a few of them in the ending battle of King Ghidorah, but again, the way they fall apart is really unrealistic.
Yeah, especially the was it the Tokyo government building in Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah?
Yeah,
that just looked really.
It always reminds 3D building puzzles.
It just looked really, really cheap.
And then that's, I think, the last movie until Godzilla 2000 in which you get practical, like, skyscraper miniatures.
Yeah.
Another thing that we see here that reminds me is that for the first time since certain features of Godzilla are brought back. Ears are to the suit. That's the first time since that had happened. Also, 4 toes are put back onto Godzilla, and more of a staggering plate configuration is back on Godzilla as well.
Yeah, and some of the parts of the Russian shots there where they talked about that. Bastard, this is really bad. It's like some of those weren't even shown at all in the '85 cut.
No, because we're Americans and those dirty, you know, like bad guys. Okay. We'll look into it.
Tell him to go hide under a desk.
Yeah, that always works. That's better advice than hiding under your desk. Holy crap. Like, that had more to do with tricking children and basing them sort of this false assurance that they're going to be okay. Yeah. It's just like, fuck you. That's not going to work. Like, even when I was a kid and I learned about that, you know, either through, like, films that I saw or whatever, I'm like, that's not gonna save ya. Even if the roof of your school came crashing down, that's not gonna, the desk is not gonna protect you from the roof crashing on you. Dumbasses. Had too much sake. Sleep that off, Godzilla.
Need a lay off for a while.
And so again here, like the way that building crumbles and the fact that it doesn't completely,
and just the way it looks from the inside there too. Yeah,
not hollow. Quick, lay down over your over by the locker. If the roof moves, your back will save you. Exactly.
We're like, hey, let's go. Let's
back shoes.
Hey, let's go in a lead-covered refrigerator, and then the atomic bomb detonation will save you, like an Indiana Jones movie.
I was just gonna say, like, that sounds like Indiana Jones. I haven't seen that fourth one, but I've heard that, yeah, like you get in a refrigerator, and apparently that will save you from an atomic blast. Yeah. I own that movie. I got the Blu-ray, set up. I have not seen that one.
My God, you're missing out, because I saw that in theaters years ago.
I mean, I am a mild Indiana Jones fan, but I'm not a huge fan, so obviously I'm not flocking to see those films. And in fact, I will tell you this. I bought that set or something like that. I have not watched a single film out of that set since I bought it. So, I mean, I've seen some of them. Like, I have seen most of Raiders of the Lost Ark, and I think I've seen most of Temple of Doom.
Oh, it's just like me with the 66 Batman series that they gave me. It's like I've never even watched those yet.
Oh my gosh. When I was a teen and in my early 20s, I always hated that series because I thought it gave Batman and superheroes in general a bad name. And then I just decided to purchase that set, and I watched. I'm like, this is genius. I'm not kidding you. I'm not kidding you when I say that Batman series is my second favorite TV series of all time. I love that series. Last Crusade is your favorite? I did like Last Crusade. I mean, that's the one I've seen the most. I think a lot of people sort of are meh on that one. But I didn't. I kind of liked it. I thought it was a lot of fun. That looks like a screen, but it's still a pretty good attempt nevertheless.
Yeah, and that one shot that they had that going over and then seeing some of these vehicles and stuff, you never saw that in the 85 cut. It'd been funny is like when he points it up and then all three of them is just like...
I've thought of that before in the past when I've seen this movie. It'd be like, that'd be funny if he shot it, but it didn't stick to the window. It went all the way through, and because of where it landed, it would have pierced Naoko and like gone all the way through her. You just have this bloody hole through her.
Oh God.
We need to have a podcast episode of like kaiju what if moments, and we go through all the films and we're like, okay, instead of that happening here, what if this happens?
Well, I know we do that quite a bit. Mainly when it comes to the commentary stuff. Also, another thing that just came up to mind. So, when Hiroshi
I would love to do it, Hayden, but that would be a multi-part podcast.
But it's like, that, like another thing I had in mind is when Hiroshi comes down to bring down, or tries to rescue them and everything. He comes down, they grab him to bring him in, and like the way that his ass was, and then the whole glass shards was like could potentially slice his ass.
I knew where you were going with that. Or what would have happened? They shot the deal, it landed on the window, and it broke the glass. And then the helicopter doors open with Ken there, and the helicopter flies by the window, and he just goes, and they just fly by. They don't rescue them. He just flies off.
It's like, you guys are on your own.
He just came by to, like, say hi.
It's like, look at me. I'm in a helicopter. Where the hell are you?
And he yells that. He takes out a megaphone. I'm saved. What are you going to do? Or he says, you guys are screwed. Good luck.
Or it's like, you guys are a bunch of dumbasses still being in a building.
What are you doing in there?
It's like trying to get all the way up to the top floor isn't gonna do jack shit.
You guys realize if you stay in there, you're dead, right?
I mean, Godzilla's tail already knocked out parts of the building, so it's like, you guys are fucked.
And then they take the helicopter, they go over by the incapacitated body of Godzilla, and they just start, like, shooting it, like, wake up, like, go over to that building and try to get Godzilla to go over to that building.
Or just like use the radar noise gun that they has, like, try to direct Godzilla. It's like, yeah. Hey, we're over here. Come to this building.
And then they cut to, like, a commercial. The Hardy's big one. You want it, don't you? And Godzilla's like,
along with his big can of Coke.
By the way, I didn't realize it until I wrapped it up. I was drinking a Dr. Pepper just before coming up here to do this podcast.
Which is a big sponsor of the movie at the time. And especially it had a lot of product placement in the American version.
Yes, they did. Oh, and I cannot believe it. We forgot it. This film is the debut of Kenpachiro Satsuma playing as Godzilla.
Yep.
He would go on to play Godzilla up through Godzilla vs. Destroyer.
And we saw him the other year, too.
Yeah. And he played Ghidorah in Godzilla vs. Ghidorah, and he played Gigan in Godzilla vs. Gigan. Mm-hmm. Stinkin' Lincoln.
They're going to make out.
That's right, Lincoln.
Make love to me.
That'd be funny if they did.
I mean, you have that sense of feeling in the air.
I don't think Dr. Shiragami would approve.
Or
because she plays his daughter in the next film.
or her brother.
I would say something, but I'm not going to go there. That'd be funny if he says, "You won't die," and then all of a sudden you see, like, from her back, a hole in her back, and he shot her. And then he just goes, Renfield from Dracula.
Good grief.
Nothing happened. The missile intercepted the other missile, and it blew up. Just outside of Earth's atmosphere.
Look at all those pretty colors.
I don't know. You decorate? It's radioactive fallout. Because they were nuclear missiles. See, that's a beautiful shot. I do like that.
It ain't Christmas yet.
That'd be funny if Goro was like, "Naoko, quick, where do you keep the decorations?" And she's like, "Huh?" And he's like, "Christmas, it's Christmas." And he starts talking like Jimmy Stewart. "Merry Christmas, everybody!"
Or like Mr. Bean, "Merry Christmas." Keep us afloat, sir.
Oh no.
Mother Nature wants Godzilla alive.
Mother Nature says you haven't had enough yet. I always thought it was weird in the American edit, like shortly after you see him get up here, it cut to one of those close-ups of him roaring in Tokyo Bay with the blue light, and I'm like, that doesn't match up with what is going on here. I'm so glad that, oh boy, I'm so glad that's not here. Because that always, even when I first saw it, I'm like, that shot just doesn't match. And I like this because it's very creepy. It really brings a sense. Although the thing is that you had all those people.
And then
I will say here's a problem with it here. You have that clear fallout, and you didn't get a crowd reaction out of it.
And then you had like all these police in riot gear and everything. It's like that they weren't even scared or anything. They just sort of, just had their shields and then just kind of looked behind them, and like they didn't have any reaction.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean that was a problem there, because I've noticed that in some of my recent viewings. I'm like, wait a minute, you had all that nuclear fallout. Like, it would have been nice to get like a crowd reaction, or the fact that wouldn't that affect the people?
Yeah, I mean, they would have ran
way?
As soon as they saw that.
Well, and the fact too that it's not addressed even in Biolani, it's like, that's some serious shit there. Like, that's just like, that would have long-term consequences.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I really like this whole Godzilla and Super X battle here.
It is actually kind of neat. Unlike Super X2, which, you go into the movie the first time you see it and you're like, oh, it reflects Godzilla's ray back, several times hotter than his actual ray. This is going to go somewhere. And it's like, kaboom, it goes up like a firecracker. You're going, well, that was kind of stupid.
Well, that, and then the outer shell was far weaker. They didn't even make it as protective compared to the original Super X and Super X3. like the concept of the Super X2 was pretty good, but
It
it was just
was,
pretty
yeah.
weak.
Well, yeah, like I
And then
still
had
have.
problems as far as absorbing Godzilla's atomic ray.
Well, yeah, but that was the thing. Like, I still have memories of when we first saw that film, and I'm like, oh, like this will take his fire and reflect it back to him several times hotter. I'm like,
Yeah.
Godzilla's in trouble now. And then it's like it's melting. I'm like, that's an IT error
Yeah.
right there. Like, someone dropped the ball on the design of that thing. It's like, you know, you're absorbing something that's incredibly hot. I don't know if you knew exactly how hot, but then your weapon is designed to reflect it back several times hotter
Yeah.
than that. I would think you would have some sort of clue as to how to construct that thing.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Apparently not. Here's a real Godzilla foot they made for the film. It's only shown in a couple of brief shots in the film. And for obvious reasons, because it does look kind of fake.
Yeah,
but,
definitely. Especially it's like the bottom part of the foot. It was
there.
like really cut off. Yeah, it's like really flat.
Yeah, and it's an actual size of Godzilla's foot in terms of the scale that they have built it here for this film, and it was used on a crane for those scenes there.
But yeah, I really like all the like the rubble and destruction, especially like in the human character side of the story. It's like they made it much more detailed compared to what we've seen in some of the other Heisei films. To me, I think this is probably the most detailed sort of destruction like sets.
Oh, it is.
All the way up to possibly. Let me see. I'm not going to count the legendary, the MonsterVerse ones, but as far as the entire Toho one, it's probably the best one all the way up to maybe the Shin Godzilla film.
Oh, don't you dare bring that up. Hayden says the whole military in Godzilla vs. Bylani were idiots. Yeah, I mean, the thing is that you can make the argument they were idiots in the entire Godzilla saga. So there might be a few exceptions here and there, but like I still remember that whole scene in Destroy All Monsters where Godzilla, the Mothra larva, Manda, and Rodan were attacking Tokyo. They had all those machine guns and missile launchers and all that coming out of even skyscrapers. Hardly any of that hit the kaiju. I mean, a lot of it, I'm sure they probably did more damage to their own real estate than they did to the kaiju.
Yeah. And see, there was a third shot of that big foot.
See, look at that building. Like, it's partially torn out. And again, like I said, like what you would see out of a majority of the Showa era films and even in the subsequent films, if that building got hit, boom, it just came crashing down like paper mache. I mean, it just...
Whereas this one, it looks very realistic in a way. I also liked in the very beginning of Godzilla vs. Bylani where they actually showed that exact building the way it was when they were trying to recover the Super X.
And another thing that they brought back for this film that they had sort of abandoned in a lot of the 70s films, and I think even in some of the late 60s films, they brought back slowing the camera down for the kaiju shots to kind of give you more of that sense of size and enormity. I always loved this hobo guy. His voice here is kind of goofy, and I still think it's pretty funny, but I think it's funnier in the New World Pictures cut.
Waiter, where are you? The service here stinks.
One for me and one for me. Don't act like a big shot fella. You just got to town. You want to hang around me? You better learn some manners.
Dumb bastard. That was his last words.
He has to be like one of the greatest characters in kaiju movie history. I mean, he really has to be.
Yeah. Jeez, and I have like a person there just lying on the ground dead. I never even noticed that.
They have a person lying on the ground dead. Is that what you said?
Yeah, when they were
They
going,
did?
yeah, like when they were going by. Oh, and there's a holes there in the neck part. Yeah, it's like they just had a person just lying like this when they were about to go up the set of stairs there.
I didn't see that.
Yeah, I just noticed that. I was like, are you kidding? They actually did that?
That's been the problem with Toho. Like, it's been mentioned numerous times throughout the kaiju fandom that it's kind of funny how, Dai had these Gamera films made for children, but yet they were very brutal in a lot of their kaiju violence, and Toho was so desensitizing their, violence in these films. And, even a film like this, from a tonal standpoint, it's actually one of the darker films, but still, like, they shy away from gruesomeness, and part of it is Toho's they're not wanting to necessarily scare their audience per se, and they're trying to make it kind of kid-friendly too, but they kind of dropped the ball on a lot of things, I think. Like, they missed opportunities to really show things. Like, you don't have to have your whole movie be about blood and gore, but if you show it in a way, like the original Gojira, for example, with some of the horrific moments during and after the rampage, you can really send a message home and still illustrate your point. It's kind of disappointing, really. Like, Toho played it safe and just, yeah, it's very unfortunate. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of like uber violence. In fact, I have a hard time watching some of that anymore. But
same here.
Like I think there are times in which, if you're trying to illustrate a point, you show it, but
right.
Toho just sanitized their property an awful lot.
But, yeah, well, it's like the way that they looked like. You didn't see really any blood or anything. It was just like a person just sort of lying like this and not even moving, with just like rubble kind of on top of them.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing. Like with that freeway explosion chain reaction, it's always been implied that people were getting hurt / killed. And the only other Godzilla movie in which you had any sort of like violence / gruesome violence on display was Ghidorah. That was about it. Mm-hmm. And really, ever since then, like, I don't think even Shin Godzilla had any of that. The MonsterVerse has never had that.
But, yeah, as far as this scene goes, I really loved it, especially when when you see his head kind of slowly coming up from the horizon there, and especially in the 85 cut where they had the music going on along with that entire shot. It was awesome.
Yeah.
Like, this scene in general, I really enjoy.
I like it because really for the first time since the nuclear reactor sequence, you get to see his body more or less in its entirety. When he's attacking Tokyo, you don't really get to see much of his entire body much because it's usually hidden behind buildings and skyscrapers. But here you finally really get to see the suit.
Mm-hmm.
And I really have grown to love this design. My only real complaint are that I think I look at the teeth and I think they're too pencil-like. I think they could have
probably
done
redesigned
them just a little bit better.
redesign it a little bit more. Yeah. But overall, this is by far my favorite Godzilla design. And then detonated all the bombs around the volcano there to make it active. Try to swallow Godzilla up. Hopefully for good, which obviously we know what the spoilers that is.
Spoilers, he comes back.
No
In case
way!
no one knew
Are you
that.
serious?
He survives this, I'm telling you. And his cry, that's always gotten to me, like in this moment here.
Yeah.
And I think his cry, right as he's dumping into the volcano, or should I say jumping, I'm sorry, into the volcano in the 85 version, I think is actually better because it has that high, like kind of an echo scream. Like he's actually screaming.
Mm-hmm.
Like that to me is horrific. It's not here. It comes close, but they added that in the New World Pictures edit, and that always to me was cringeworthy. Like it just was haunting because it's just like, oh, like
Yeah. Make out.
And then you have the ending here. A beautiful yet kind of melancholy song here. This is one I'm not a huge fan of sad songs, but if they're good enough, kind of like this one is, I'm sort of attracted to like listening to them, just because it is done so well. But yeah, like I'm gonna turn it off now.
And then in the 85 cut, the ending goes on for a little bit longer with Raymond Burr's character just sort of narrating the end part, and then goes to credit.
Which is a good narration, actually.
I really liked it.
Yeah, and so that is The Return of Godzilla. Basically, the Japanese cut. I listened to it with the international dub.
I just had the original Japanese with the subtitles, which it's like I've got the volume down almost all the way, so I can at least read the subtitles.
Yeah, and I mean, Lincoln, what do you think of the movie? This is like your second time seeing the film now. Number 3, good. What does that mean? Well, you like it, but I'm trying to understand the part. Anyways, so yeah, I mean, he enjoys it. Again, to me, I really enjoy this film. This is one of a handful of Godzilla films I could watch almost on repeat and never get tired of.
So you're just like me
now. This film, 98, 2014, 2019, Mothra versus Godzilla and an Astro Monster. Those are the welcome back, Hayden. We just concluded actually the film. Um, but yeah, those are like the films for me, at least in terms of the Godzilla universe, that I could watch almost over and over again and not get tired of. Those are basically my favorites. Bylon I really like too, but unfortunately that seems to have slightly um, kind of dropped on my list for a short bit. It's still maybe my top 10, but I really enjoy this movie. I dig it. I think the special effects, from a practical standpoint, probably are the best out of any Godzilla movie that uses practical effects. The score is, I think, maybe the best non-Ifukube score. In fact, I would even argue this could challenge a lot of Ifukube's work and hold up really well. It's one of my favorite Godzilla scores. I love the Godzilla design, although I'm not a huge fan of like the pencil type teeth, but that's more of a nitpick at this point. Otherwise, the rest of the design is awesome. I think the characters are done pretty darn well. We get a great story and a lot of explanations of motivations, and we get character arcs and all that. I think it's a really well done film. Tonally, it's, in my opinion, the darkness of the tone, it makes it, I think, one if not the best of the Godzilla franchise. I just think I just think it is a really well done film. It's incredibly entertaining. Anybody who has not seen it, I think if I made a list of Godzilla films to show to newbies and say, like, these are the Godzilla films you have to see coming out of the gate in order to not just understand the Godzilla character, but to sort of get attached to the character and to become a fan, this is definitely one of them. Hayden says it's definitely one of my favorites, but not in my top 3, but it's up there. To each their own. Everybody's got their favorites. This isn't in my top 3 either. This, to me, from no one probably could hear me earlier, but like I was saying earlier, in my Godzilla fandomness, I think this is in my top 5. If we're just talking about Godzilla films, I think this is in my top 5. But if you start to say, well, kaiju films, and you start to include Gamera films, and you start to include other kaiju films in general, that stays in here, it's probably in my top 10. It probably drops out of the top 5. But it's a wonderful film. I think this is a movie that every Godzilla fan, really every kaiju fan, has to see. And I'm talking about this particular version, Godzilla, or the Return of Godzilla, the Japanese cut. Whether you watch it with subtitles or the international dub, it doesn't matter. I think it's a must-watch Godzilla film. I know this is probably sacrilege to say, but I think it holds up better than Gojira. And Gojira is a fine film, do not get me wrong, but a lot of things within that film are outdated, some of which are not the film's fault. But I think Return of Godzilla still holds up really well, almost 4 decades after the fact. So definitely, you have to watch it. If you have not seen it, you got to watch it.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say anything much further besides this still being my all-time favorite Godzilla film and one of my all-time favorites in general. I just love every minute of watching this version of the film. I've mainly due to like the 85 cut, but as far as the original Japanese cut of The Return of Godzilla, I've seen it at least maybe 2 or 3 times, and I think it gets better and better. Although there could be some little quirkiness that I've seen here and there, but yeah, I still enjoy every minute of watching this film.
Can you close the door? I'm sorry. Please close the door, Lincoln. Lincoln, can you please close the door? what door? Please close that door. That's fine. I'm just asking you to close the door. Doggone it.
uh,
I'm sorry. That's like, what, the third or fourth time this has happened. I really have to reconsider whether or not I include them on these now. Yeah, this is a wonderful film. Try it. Check it out. You have to check it out.
it is a must to check it out.
Do we want to go ahead and do what we've done and figure out a date and a movie for our next commentary?
Well, I think we've done quite a bit of commentaries. I think we should maybe do a regular podcast show next time.
Actually, I do have my phone up here. Because I had some ideas. I hope I wrote them down. I know I wrote a few down. I don't know. Because I had some ideas.
Yeah, because I think we've done maybe 3 or 4 straight commentaries already. I would like to try to do something, try to get back to the regular schedule here.
Okay, so I have like 4 ideas, for potential ideas. I'm not saying we have to do them or anything like that, but they were just kind of some thoughts. Why won't you close? Come on. So here's like 4 ideas I have had down for a while. I had another one. I think I told you here the other day, but I didn't write it down on this. One idea would be having an episode as far as like what would be the best solo Godzilla or Kaiju films. So basically like the best solo Kaiju films. We could also have another podcast where we discuss why did the Godzilla character endure while others either didn't endure as well as Godzilla. We could also have just different podcasts where we discuss the Japanese versions of such films, like the Japanese version of King Kong vs. Godzilla, or Varan, or Godzilla Raids Again, and other films in which there's a Japanese cut. And then the last idea I have on here is covering each decade and discussing themes within the movies, etc. So those are some ideas that I have had. Like I said, I should go back in my text messages here because I think there was one I brought up to you.
Yeah, we can probably
here, like within the last
week. We can probably discuss those later on. Maybe whenever, like after this episode, or maybe tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
We can probably, while testing out some more of this Streamlab with the audio issue, we can maybe talk a little bit more about it.
Yeah, and like you actually, the other one I had was that potentially discussing films that are having big anniversaries. Like this year would be the 20th anniversary of Megaguirus.
Yeah, because I know
it would be sort of a rediscussion of that.
Because I know we did like in the early days back in 2013, we did the 80th anniversary of Con Month, where we basically for an entire month discussed anything con related stuff.
And I think we did commentaries of them all too.
Some of them, I think.
I think we did commentaries for all of them.
I'm not.
Because I remember you and I know we definitely did 2005 because we were together.
Well, I know
in the
that.
Same room doing
I know that, but I'm not entirely sure if we did all commentaries of those.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
Actually, I just had my document. Oh, I closed it.
Way to go.
But yeah, those are some ideas. I'm all. I'm up for whatever, but I'm even up for doing more commentaries. I think part of the reason why we haven't done some of the discussions is because you don't have some of the movies like I have. Like I have I still have not watched that. I bought that new when it came out on Blu-ray. but I have not watched it. Part of it is because I wanted to watch it when we were getting ready to discuss it at some point, and you just haven't had it.
Oh, and
So
then especially with what's going on, because I'm based here in Minneapolis and like in the Twin Cities area, and sort of the recent going ons that's been happening, and like one of the it's like I actually had a package coming, and it was from Amazon. It was like a few bucks, but unfortunately, that there was a problem, and it's being returned with a refund coming in a few business days.
oh well, that
Yeah.
sucks. I mean, if you want, we could even like if you could rent it or through Prime if you can
It's
watch
probably
it.
going
Like
to have to come.
do a film like
It's probably going to
Colossal.
have to come to that point with the current situation going on. Because I mean, it's like I recently rented that new Scooby Doo movie from Prime
Hmm.
and stuff, so I've at least have done that.
Yeah. So I mean, like I said, Colossal's been around for what, at least 2 years, and like I said, I have
A
not
few,
watched
yeah.
it yet. That could be something we could do too, or even look into some other ideas, other films, um, as well.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think why don't we just do Colossal? Just get it out of the way.
do Colossal.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think
So
I'll probably rent the movie one of these days, maybe a couple days beforehand. So then
okay.
I
So
can
let
at
me bring
least
up
watch it.
my notes here. Um, Let me bring it up here. So what date are we looking at potentially doing that
Because
here?
today is the 30th. It's the second and last day of May. Hard to believe it's that time already. And here we are, going to be in June, a Monday.
Open up.
June
Okay.
18th.
Colossal. Cross that. Oh, come on. I gotta enable editing. Oh, for Pete's sakes. I did it in this particular version of Word. Oh, we already did Magic Serpent. I didn't cross that off for some reason.
Yeah, you remember we did an entire month of Magic Serpent?
Well, yeah. Didn't you say you watched, like, what was it, Invasion of Neptune Men here the other day?
The MST 3K version of it.
Oh. Okay, well, then you're not gonna get a full.
Well, it's like I know a lot of those old 50s classic type of films they have for free on Prime. Like the Angry Red Planet and some of the others too. I
Hmm.
forget.
Okay, so we'll do Colossal. What date are we looking at?
Let's see here. Should we do
When is Father's Day?
Father's
Is it
Day?
the
Is the
21st?
21st? It says.
Okay, I don't want to be doing it on the 20th or the 21st because I think my in-laws are coming to visit that weekend.
Okay. Maybe I probably would say the 17th. Not
I can
17th.
do it.
13th.
I can do it 13th, yeah, because as of right now, I don't think there's anything uh, planned really.
Because I know, like, probably after Father's Day, and then you got the 27th, and then obviously the 4th of July, and then possibly of me potentially coming over for a week. Because if I do, we probably will have, like, if you want to do like the 3-day sort of thing.
Oh yeah,
We
yeah.
probably would have
We need
we probably
to
would have
be thinking about whether or not we want to do that.
well, hear me out. If we were planning on doing that whole 3-day thing, we probably would have to actually do it from Wednesday to Friday, because then Saturday, I probably will have to start heading back. So I'll probably have to head
Well,
to
yeah.
Chicago, and then I'll have to be back home by Sunday the 12th.
Yeah, my point though is that if that's something we're wanting to do, we need to seriously consider um, putting in some.
There was a ball by the fridge.
If we're going to do it, we need to figure out if indeed we're going to do it. Like, we need to figure that out within like maybe the next couple weeks, because what we'll need to do then is brainstorm. Because I had given you, well, and I even have it on our Facebook page, and I even posted something about it on my own page a couple weeks ago now, as far as just potential ideas of what to do. And if we're wanting other people to join us on some of these, then we need to get going on getting the word out there and getting people to also do necessary work if they want to join us, and maybe getting things set up, like with Google Meetings or whatever platform we're wanting to use to get going. So what we need to do is we need to first and foremost figure out, yes, are we going to do it or not? If so, then what are we going to do? Because this is going to be, I think planning it is going to take several weeks. In terms of not just ideas, but if we're wanting, depending upon what we're wanting to do, if we're wanting other people to join us, then we're looking to spend a week at least just maybe trying to recruit people as well, depending upon what we're looking to do. So that's something we need to be considering. Like, we probably, what is today, the 30th? You're looking, G-Fest would have been, come on calendar, G-Fest would have been, what was it, the 9th through the 12th?
Yeah.
So, like, I'm thinking we need to get something figured out probably by the 13th at the very latest, because even then we're going to be pushing some things, because by that point we're looking at just over 3.5 weeks, and in fact just under 3.5 weeks from when we start to do something like that. So we need to kind of like figure things out either by the 6th or the 13th at the absolute latest, if that's what we're going to do. So yeah. And because then we need at least a few weeks to then figure out what we're going to do, and then to do necessary research and planning and constructing of panels and that sort of thing. So that's something we need to figure out. So join us June 13th for our discussion of Colossal, a kaiju movie that has Anne Hathaway in it, and I've never seen it, so I have no clue as to what I'm getting myself into. Thank you so very much for listening to our commentary. I don't know why we had that discussion at the end of this commentary, but we did. Yeah, come join us June 13th for our discussion of Colossal.
And before we sign off, I just want to point this out again. If you haven't done so, make sure to subscribe to us on these following podcasts and streaming networks. On the podcast audio side, it's Apple Podcasts, Google Play Music, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and TuneIn. And then as far as the video streaming networks, obviously YouTube, and then we have Twitch, DLive, and Periscope. And then if you want to follow us via social networks, you can follow us at these certain social networks. Just search for Daikaiju Network. You should be able to find us there. And you can visit us at our own website over at daikaijunetwork.com.
And I recently wrote an article there. It's the first one since my open letter to the G-Fest committee. I released it here, I think, earlier in the week. I even posted it on Facebook, which I think also posts it to our other social networks, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, my article is about the importance and uniqueness of Godzilla Raids Again. So check that out.
All right. So it is June 13th. We'll be doing Colossal. So thanks for watching, everyone. Take care.